Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of World Talks here on TVP World. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee, and please join me and my guest on this next interview. Now, today marks International Women's Day, a holiday seen by some as a relic of communist times, while for others, it's an opportunity to discuss women's rights. Is such a holiday still needed? And what are the biggest challenges in achieving gender equality today? Joining us to discuss this is Dorota Haller, Vice President of IAA Poland and a member of the Diversity, Equity and Inclusion Council at IAA Global. Hello, ma'am, and welcome to TVP World.
Hello, it's great to be here.
So, how are you personally celebrating Women's Day today?
Well, actually, I think it's very important to celebrate it. So I do celebrate it while talking about women's rights, because I think it's an opportunity. Obviously, we shouldn't talk about it only on Women's Day, but not to trivialize it, but to talk about what we have achieved and why women's rights are human rights. I personally spent the time actually with my girlfriends, but also at some panel discussions talking about gender equality.
Right, so you mentioned that Women's Day has been trivialized nowadays. What do you think contributed to that?
Well, I don't know if it's broadly trivialized, but it's treated as a day when we say, you know, nice things, drop a heart at social media, give a flower. It used to be carnations in old times, in communist times, and just talk about, well, not important issues. And it's great. It's great to have fun also, but I think we can use an opportunity of such a day to talk about things which are of importance, especially now that the world is changing. The diversity, equity, inclusion initiatives are being pushed back, and the whole atmosphere, if you will, of gender equality is shifting. Hence, why not use the opportunity of International Women's Day to talk about more important subjects than just go for a coffee, have a flower, and a kiss from your partner?
Sure. All right. So in that case, let's shed on some light on these very important issues. You just mentioned diversity, equity, and inclusion is kind of on its back foot. And recent polling also does suggest that more and more people are looking at it less favorably. And some circles even use DEI as sort of a dirty word nowadays. What do you think is a contributor to that effect? And to those people who sees that as a negative, what would be your argument against it?
I think it's a general atmosphere. It's shifting into more conservative life in politics. So there is much more conservative attitude towards life now. It's, of course, you know, the elections in the United States, the whole new administration is more conservative, but also in Europe. We have recent elections where more conservative views are being favored. Also, there is some narrative that all of these corporate, mainly the DEI initiatives, were fake. That it was just done because it was the moment, it was popular, but that they are not effective and efficient. And I think it's not true. There is a lot of research showing that equal management boards of corporations, the corporations are more effective, that they actually make more profit, and that they are more long-term. It's beneficial for corporations for their results in terms of business. In terms of governments, EU is about equality. You know, we have rules and regulations here actually supporting rules and regulations for equality and for gender equality as well. I think there are three aspects. One is social, one is political, and one could be more on economic importance. So that's what I mentioned. The economic importance is results, social is also human rights, and political, we need more women in power and policy making.
Sure. Do you think that with the current economic situation in Europe, which some people find it to be struggling, it perhaps contributes to the kind of general consensus of wanting some change, and perhaps these DEI initiatives end up being kind of something that they target because they just want things to be different?
Well, some of these are, we call it pinkwashing, right? Some of them are just fake initiatives. I think the atmosphere is shifting, and I think it's our job as active women and women activists to be vocal about it and to give arguments why we need equality. It's not about initiatives. Initiatives are just to make it happen, but why we need to be more talking about it and why equality is important. You know, in Poland, 52% of the population is women, and more or less, we are half of the global population. So why should we have less rights, and why we should not have equal pay, for example, on the economical part? In Poland, there's 12% pay gap, which is crazy. What it means is that women get less paid for the same jobs and the same responsibility
so
as
in
men.
the same job description,
Yes,
same
exactly.
worked hour,
Yes.
they get
Yes.
12%
Yes.
less in general.
Yes.
Oh, that is...
So the pay gap is an issue. Also, you know, women work not as long as men. So in Poland, the retirement age is younger for women. Hence, there is a social inequality because we get less pension and women live longer. There are so many imbalances, and I think International Women's Day is a perfect moment to talk about. It's a perfect day to talk about some important issues, as I said, social, economical, and political, rather than just talking about carnations. But of course, the carnations, you know, this is a history of, in Poland, I remember the communist times when all of the women at their workplaces would get a flower and, I don't know, a candy or a pack of coffee or stockings, you know, pantyhose. It's very strange. Small gift. It was, on one hand, I think, appreciated by women. On the other hand, it was part of a propaganda kind of portraying women as being able to have it all, to be perfect at the workplace and at home at the same time. And this is this expectation of women to have two jobs, pretty much, you know, to run the household and to have professional career.
Do you think some of the pushback against like these issues have something to do also with, perhaps, like you mentioned, like the misconception, sort of propagandistic efforts, and perhaps, like you mentioned, some pinkwashing that gives an easy target for people to point at and say, oh, look, these are like fake initiatives, and these are just something that is not worthy of concern?
Well, there are so many examples, there are books about this, that these initiatives are not fake if they are done properly and if they are done truthfully. There is an initiative, I don't remember exactly when, but there was an audition for a philharmonic orchestra. And once it was done in a blind, you know, you didn't see the musicians, were they female or male. There was much more equality in the orchestra chosen musicians, artists, than when you see who is male, who is female. I'm not saying that these biases are on purpose. There is, sometimes it's completely not, but these are the things within us, and in order to overcome them, we need to have certain actions taken, meaning, for example, initiatives. Perhaps they need to be changed. Perhaps corporations or even governments did some pinkwashing. But still, I think throwing it all away is a waste, and it's wrong.
Right. One of the reasons I think a lot of these issues are taking a back seat right now, perhaps, is whole Europe is entrenched in discussions of security, with that dominating the discourse. Do you find in your personal life that the current news cycle and with everything going on globally have shifted some attention away from the women's topic personally?
Yes, I do, but it would be strange if it didn't, because, you know, there are different priorities based on what's going on in the world, and the world is in a dangerous place, especially here in Poland. You know, we're bordering with a country where there is war, and we didn't have a, you know, full-blown war in Europe for a pretty long time, and the whole world is unstable. So I think absolutely, of course, we have to talk about security. But at the same time, we should not forget about other important issues. You know, security is also about women, because we're part of the society. So we shouldn't exclude us or exclude half of the society from this discussion.
All right, perhaps you can walk and chew gum at the same time.
There you go. There you go.
To, security issue. This one is actually quite interesting to me, because recently the Polish Prime Minister has announced trying to get all Polish men to go through military training, and in which he stated that war is still largely the domain of men. Do you agree with that statement, or do you think perhaps women should also undergo some sort of mandatory military training as well?
I think that statement, I know what he meant, but I don't agree with the statement per se, because I think there is a lot of jobs or a lot of service that women soldiers or women in military could do. So I think this was a maybe unfortunate way of communicating, but I think I understand his intentions as being fair towards both genders. Perhaps I'm a believer in gender equality everywhere.
Now, where do you see Poland when it comes to gender equality, gender rights compared to the rest of the world? What are some of the parts that you feel like still needs more effort and more work on?
Well, there is a lot of, as I say, backlash now from the world. Poland, obviously, we have some troubles. We've had some troubles with basic things like childcare. You know, in order for women to be able to be active in a workforce, they need to have childcare because conservatively in Poland, we still believe that women are main carers, not only for children, but also for seniors. So childcare would be very important. We overcame this in Warsaw. I'm very proud of it. I'm a Warsawian. So, but in terms of Poland, we are still behind the EU standards. So this will be one thing. In terms of reproductive rights, you know, EU supports access to abortion as a human right. Which is not the case in Poland. So this is also, we're one of the strictest abortion laws in Europe, in Poland. Again, this is one of the problems, I think, for women's rights. Gender pay gap, which I mentioned already, which is also bigger in Poland than in other countries. And, you know, women in leadership, again, in business, also in politics. There is a mandatory reporting and measures for closing the gap in the EU. It's not in Poland. There is now this regulation which is coming from the EU. It's an EU directive. It's going to be Women on Boards, it's called. It's going to be active as of 2026, and I hope it's going to change the situation. I could go on and on and on because, you know, there is also on the social end, there is a violence against women, Istanbul Convention that supports that. Polish previous government had a backlash on that. Work-life balance, another directive from EU, which the implementation, sometimes we seem to be implementing these directives too slow, you know, because we are EU country, so we will do it, but perhaps we need to speed up.
All right. How much do you think these issues will affect the coming presidential election?
In terms of actually voters, I think it will be yet again up to women in Poland. So they'll probably, if more women go to vote, it might shift who will be our next president. So ladies, please go and vote. And I think the women's issues are not now top of the agenda, as you said, rightly so, because security is. Right. But today is International Women's Day, and candidates were talking about women and to women and about women's needs. And I think it will be on the agenda of these elections, but probably not top priority.
Right. Anywhere within the European Union, any country that you would point to as perhaps a more stellar example that Poland could probably follow when it comes to gender rights?
I think Scandinavian countries are a good example, but it also, you know, it takes some time, and I understand that and appreciate that it takes some time because it's also about heritage and about tradition. And traditionally, the woman's role in Polish society was very different. We've been now a free economy for 40 years, you know, not even, so it takes time. But I think every next generation, I see young women now, I mentor a lot of young women, I see young women have a completely different attitude towards partnership in personal life and at work. So I see there's hope with the new generation, with the partnership and equality everywhere.
All right, so we'll have to see how that shaped out. In the meantime, thank you so much for your input and insight. I really appreciate it. And thanks for being with us on TVP World.
Thank you very much for having me. Thanks.
And thank you for tuning into this edition of World Talks. But for more news, update, and commentary, please stay tuned to TVP World.